So hello everyone, thank you for watching this new video by 3D Total. Today we have Madison Harper with us today. Madison is a graphic designer and illustrator based in the United States. Her work tends to lean to a more traditional inspired style with warm, vibrant colors and radiates a fairy tale, whimsical and nostalgic feeling. Today we'll be discussing with Maddie on not one, but two books. So thank you so much, Maddie.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're just gonna jump right into it. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your artistic background, your journey as an artist? Just share with us your growth and how you've come to be the artist you are today.
yeah. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. This is an honor. I love working with 3D Total and all the people that have done these books. And so my journey started when I was in college. Well, actually, when I was in high school, I always loved doing art, and it was kind of like I just that was the one thing I was mostly good at, and so like nothing else really clicked. Like I was somewhat good at math, but nothing else really hit. And so throughout high school, I was like, maybe I'll become an architect. That's the only like artistic type thing I could think of doing. And then I got to the end of high school. I went to just a state college in my town because it was cheap, and I didn't want to have any debt if I could help it. And so I went to Missouri State University and I started going down their illustration track. And the professors there, that's really what opened my eyes to like all of these other different avenues of art making as a career, from like doing visual development for films to just illustrating children's book magazine covers. Just a whole realm of art was open up to me, because it was either just like fine art or, like I said, architecture. And so that's really started opening up, and I owe a lot of it to my professors for just being incredible. And I was really lucky to be there. And then throughout that, since then, when I graduated in 2021, that spring, with a BFA in illustration, I just kind of jumped right into doing freelance illustration. And since then, it's been a journey, and faith is a big part of it for me. So walking through that with God and having Jesus be the center of my worth has really helped shape where I'm walking, and taking a lot of the questioning out of the process of like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Having that be the center of it has really helped me a lot. And so since then, I've just been doing freelance illustration, working with incredible clients and people, and just building up a portfolio, and just it's been a really fun journey. Yeah.
You know what? I absolutely love your story because it's very similar to me as well. I actually, in high school, I only thought I could, I mean, I love drawing. That was the only thing I could do as well. And the closest thing to like, we did have art classes, but, art classes was just like art classes. And because I'm from Nigeria and I did high school in Nigeria, we, art isn't really the most, common like career path. So I was trying to look for what I could do that had to do with arts, and we had like I also thought maybe I'll be an architect and stuff, but it was a teacher in high school who like found my sketchbook one day and he was like, "You did this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "You should go into like you should do this for a living." I was like, "Yeah, but I can." And he was like, "What do you mean?" That was like the first time I realized there was something like like I always watched animations, but for some reason I never thought
Yeah.
like people get paid to do this, right? Like it just never was a concept to me. And then like finding out for the first time, I was like, okay, I guess maybe I could like try to do this.
You
And
have a little bit of hope now. You're like, okay, this is,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So I really relate to your story, and I really love that. And I'm just like, it's just really cool, hearing someone else in like in similar situation. um I wanted to also ask, so you developed as an artist, from finding out like that, okay, you can actually take this seriously. What were some of your early inspirations as a bit, like when you started off, when you started taking it seriously, and what are some of your inspirations now?
Yeah. So towards the end of high school, as I was getting into college, Disney was like a huge one, because again, like I didn't have a lot of just resources. Like, and that's like you said, that's all we watched was just animated films. And so Disney was a huge inspiration for me. And that was just like just looking at old Disney illustrators and the visual development artists and all of that. That was really like the spark at the beginning. And then as I got into illustration at Missouri State University, instead of I had to make a decision to go between the and down the animation track or the illustration track at college. And I'm really glad I chose the illustration track because those teachers really opened up a whole new world of inspiration. So that's when they really showed us the golden age illustrators like Arthur Rackham, and C. Wyeth, um, all those others that's slipping my mind now, but all of those like and old cartoonists and stuff. Like I got to take a cartooning class, which was like doing like comic strips and graphic narrative classes. And so those just a few of those teachers there specifically really showed us just a deep dive into golden age illustrators that I wouldn't have like found on my own just looking around. And those really impacted my style because I love just the tangibility, and you can just feel just the love and the joy that's put into a lot of those older illustrations, and the materials that they use. They really introduced, we took classes on different illustrating techniques and stuff, and materials to use for that. And so since then, that's been a huge part of it, is just looking way back at the ones who really started it all, and gathering little bits and pieces of in what inspired them as well, like looking into their stories of how they started and what inspired them. And so that's really what it shifted into now. It's just a whole range of illustrators as well, and with a little touch of the Disney and all the other animators and stuff in there too, which has been kind of cool. Yeah.
Definitely, and I can see a lot of the inspirations you mentioned. I can really see that reflects in your work. Like I said, I discovered your work very recently, and I was just blown away like by all your illustrations. Like I said, the warm, vibrant colors. It really gives a kind of like, you could really tell you're inspired by the golden age of illustrations with the characters, the expressions, the colors, the mood. Like I said, it gives me so much nostalgic vibes, even though like I wasn't born or raised in that era. I could kind of feel the energy. It makes me feel like I'm there in the picture. Like I really love your line work, your choice of like expressions and how you exaggerate. I absolutely love it. It's so beautiful. And I guess that also kind of like, obviously reflects in the kind of work you do right now, because you were, like I mentioned in the beginning of the interview, you've been featured in two 3D Total books, which is The Field Guides to Witches and Fairy Tales and Folklore, which I think is splendid because your work does give up that whimsical, magical, like feeling to it. So can you share a bit about your contribution and what you did contribute into the book and both books? Just like tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think I did the fairy tale and folklore one first, and they asked me to do Pinocchio, which immediately just obsessed with, and that was an interesting challenge too, because obviously Disney's done Pinocchio, and that's the one that you're aware of first. And our professors in college even talked about that, of like there's a lot of characters out here that are public domain, but they're so well known in a certain way, and so it's a challenge to try to create your own version of it, like to take away all other visual knowledge that you know of this and to create your own. So that was the first one, which was such a joy to get to do and to just explore who this character was just in the context of the written story. And then the Field Guide to Witches was the second one, and I did the Snow Queen for that one.
I absolutely love the work from, I love everything. I love the Pinocchio, I saw the sketches, but I love the Snow Queen. I thought you captured her very, very well. Like I thought like your representation of the Snow Queen was so unique, right? It wasn't something I'd seen before, and I really loved it. I was drawn to it. That's when I got the Field Guides to Witches. I was like flipping through, I was like, what? Like I was absolutely blown away. I think you really captured her. I think you captured everything perfectly, and I just really love the way you're able to take a character and then kind of channel your own, like, okay, this is how I want to like represent it, this is how I kind of want to, this is what I want to focus on, this is the kind of look I want, this kind of style I'm going for. Can you talk about like that creative workflow and like how you kind of like go from an idea to coming up with the final character design?
Yes. So that's always an interesting process, because so it's kind of funny because I would kind of deem myself not a very creative person. Like I feel like I can execute things, but it's the coming up with the ideas that I like. That one is the hardest part of the process for me. And so, but what's great about these and what I've loved just the most recently is if I can have someone else's story where they built up this character already, like I mentioned before, just in the written story of like, what are their motivations? What makes up this character? How did they grow up? What are their goals in life or whatever? And then and then to have like little bits here and there of like important details about them, like Pinocchio is made of wood, like little things like that that you know that the character needs to have in it, and then to build it from there. That helps a lot to have that base for me, especially like I know a lot of people can just come up with things on the fly and it's always so impressive, but like so to have that base helps a lot. And so for me it was just a lot of background research, so I gathered as much as I could. So like with Pinocchio, I read the old like story from, I think it was the 1900s or whenever that was originally written, and just like read it without having any other like visual thing to influence what I was creating. And so I read it, and I read, I think they mentioned at one point he wears a wig, like he wears his the maker's wig at one point. It's like a blonde wig, and just the different parts of the story and his personality and how spunky he was, and the role that his little cricket friend played in it as well. And so kind of just building up that and just imagining, okay, what would this young like 5-year-old boy kind of act like and look like, because he has this mischievous side to him, but he's also innocent because he's young, and he's kind of just learning his way through the world and growing that way. And so that really informs a lot of it. And for me, like the expressions on the face are like my favorite part, and that's really what like that's where I lean on a lot. Like everything else, like I can kind of play around with it, but getting his expression is like one of the biggest parts, and like getting his nose, and so kind of deeming those important parts of it and then building it from there is kind of the creative process. And it was similar with the Snow Queen as well. That one was kind of fun because I leaned especially towards like the Narnia version of the Snow Queen, which is maybe a little bit different because, like I said, there's like different versions of her in different stories. But I love the Chronicles of Narnia series, and so because I've read those a few times, and so getting to like I thought back to when I read those and how did I picture her and what kind of attitudes did I want to give her, just this very like proud but kind of sneaky kind of feel to her. And then I gave her like a little more of a modern twist in that drawing too, which that's just kind of a fun way to add, like trying to make it more unique, like what you said and stuff, and like something that like I maybe hadn't seen before. And so that's a lot of it is building up that initial story and that initial groundwork, and then the ideas kind of grow out of that. And then of course like creating different sketches, different versions of it, going through and being okay with failing at a lot of them, I think is a big thing of like going through and you're like, okay, this doesn't work, let me draw it again and kind of pick out what does work. And then eventually you come to the final conclusion when you're happy with it, which I think a lot of artists will say they're never fully happy with what they make anyways, but to a good enough for yourself kind of place.
Yeah, most times it's like I've done it, right? But you
Yep.
know, it's like I think I'm happy, but I'm not sure. Maybe I could improve a bit more, you know. But totally, I agree with you. I was interviewing Dom Lay a few days ago, and he mentioned how story is very important, and I feel like a lot of people forget story and like how to capture personality, attitude, emotions, and like you said, definitely the facial expressions, and like is very important in capturing emotions of a character. And like I mentioned, I think you captured the personalities, and you did a solid job in like capturing the emotions of the characters very well in those designs. And I could personally, looking at the sketches, I could tell you had so much fun. But I want to ask you, because I was just looking at them, especially with Pinocchio, all the sketches, like the jumpy and everything. I want to ask you, what was your favorite part of the process, and also what was the most like stressful, the most difficult part of the process for you, when coming up with Pinocchio and Snow Queen?
Yeah, so the most enjoyable is kind of what you just said, is having fun with it, and like imagining, like just imagining this creature person existing in real life and stuff, and kind of imagining what they'd be like, and pulling a lot from just real life experiences of working with kids at different camps that I do over the summer and stuff, and just and being around that. Like my mom used to babysit all the time, and so kind of pulling information from that of like of what I know about how kids act and stuff, and especially like mischievous ones like Pinocchio. And so really bringing fun into the project helps a lot, because it just makes the whole thing more enjoyable and stuff. And I think I think a lot of artists would agree, but like the most fun is when you kind of hit the moment of like, this is this is kind of what I want it to look like, and then you can just really run with it from there. And what I love about like the way that you guys do your books is you have us create like several different expressions for them and stuff, and that's when it gets really fun of just exploring, okay, where could it go from there, and it really pushes you out to try different versions and stuff. And same with the Snow Queen as well, of like that one was a different one because I love drawing like children in their stories a lot because of just the joy and that they bring in. So it was an interesting challenge to change over to the Snow Queen and draw someone older, and that was a fun, and get different colors in there because it was even just the whole idea of her is a little darker than I normally draw, and so that was an interesting challenge, and it was really fun to really break out of my comfort zone a little bit on that one. And then overall, I think the most challenging part is to just, I don't know, just really keep pushing it even farther. Because I think something, even though like I know the value of doing sketches and doing things multiple times, I tend to like run with it, whatever the first thing is. But when I do sit and do multiple ones, I really see what changes between them and what can get better that I wouldn't have noticed if I'd stuck with the first version, if that makes sense. And so that's something that I'm incorporating more now into just my process of working on other projects and stuff too, of like, okay, let me pause here, let me try a different version and see if something works even better, like a different solution I wouldn't have seen before. And so yeah, that was a lot of it.
I definitely agree, especially like you said, trying to like push a design further or push an idea. I also had the issue. I still have the issue whereby like I have an idea. I'm like, no, this is the idea. Like I know that's it. That's what I want to do. But sometimes like no, just try to explore a bit more. Try to like push things here and then. You find out like you can take it to a much more advanced, or like you can get it beyond what you actually expected. Sometimes like basically it pushes you beyond your original idea, and sometimes for the better. Sometimes you realize, okay, no, I have to come back to the original idea. That's kind of division, but it's fine. But like I think definitely taking it can be challenging to make the first step to like one of my teachers in school says kill your babies, right? Like I know that sounds very wrong, but like it's like yeah, like just like if it don't make it, don't I not I how to put this, don't dwell too much on one idea, and be ready to let that idea like evolve and make more ideas. Don't always just like say, oh, this is the only idea I want to do, and stick with that, because sometimes you could be holding yourself back from like something even better. So I totally agree with you. It's definitely a challenge that like we have to try to balance. I totally agree. So speaking of the book, like for example, like Field Guides to Witches, at first I was not like, when I heard about the book, I was like, oh, who is this book for? Like, what exactly am I getting if I get this book? Like, what am I, for some 3D Total books are more direct, right? Like an artist art of book, or like how to paint portraits, it's very, but like, what exactly is in this book? Who would you like recommend this book for? And can you tell us a bit about the book itself?
Yes. So it is like that is something interesting about it. It's a little more focused than some of the other ones, and I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's like what's cool is it's quite focused, but then when you open it and you look at all of the different artists in there and all the different directions they take, pretty similar characters, it's so inspiring to see and to just to see their process of like, oh, that's so interesting that they thought of doing this with this character. I wouldn't have thought of doing that. So that's one aspect of it that I would recommend to people if you're kind of in a creative slump and you just want to see how other artists solve problems with their art. That's a wonderful way to do it. For me, like if I'd seen this book, it would be like an interesting exploration of, like I said, something I don't normally explore, like a little bit of a darker theme, just to break out of the norm and to try something different. So if there's an artist out there who doesn't quite draw that sort of thing, this is a great thing to explore, to expand your horizons. And that's another a great way to get out of a creative slump or an artist block, to just try something you haven't really drawn before. Just kind of break out of what you've been doing, and then you'll kind of see things in a whole new way. So those two are a big one, and but mainly just the creative process of like there's so like all of the artists in there are so like I was flipping through and I got it too, and I was like, oh my god, like how did they come up with doing this? And to see their process from the pencil to the color and how they even colored it and created a whole scene out of it. It's like a little mini just visual development for a movie in itself. And there's so many in there too, so like you can sit there for hours flipping through it. So that's a big one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, it's like a little book for visual development of a movie. You just wish like all these characters could come together and be like in the movie, their own movie. And like you said, so many amazing artists and their process, each unique, and you learn something. And the book actually inspired me to hopefully do a mini project in the future. I don't know if that's gonna actually happen, but then I kind of got so inspired by like the folklore and everything and the process, and like it gave me so much ideas, and now I'm looking forward to a project that who knows if I actually do it or not. But then it did give me some inspiration. I totally agree with you. So we're rounding up with the interviews. Thank you so much, like I mentioned. But before we finalize, can you share some advice for not only beginner artists but artists who are just trying to, maybe they're struggling or they're trying to like find themselves, or just any advice you have for artists in general?
Yeah. So the main thing I'll say is something one of my professors told me in college was like, your hand is your hand and no one else can replicate that. And so lean so much into that and let that be kind of what guides you. Like, don't try to draw like this other artist that's incredible. Like, there's always going to be people better than you. There's always going to be, and that's something to accept too. But the way that you specifically draw like your hand, no one else has. And so let that be. And another thing he used to say is like, your consistent inconsistencies are the thing that makes your art what it is. And so like a lot of artists, and I even went through this phase of like, what's my style, what's my like thing, and you try so hard to find it. But if you just draw for the sake of drawing, and the things that like maybe your hands always look a little bit weird, but if they always look weird, then that's you and that's your hand, and that's what's beautiful about it, and it's so charming and wonderful. And then the last thing, which is something I'm even still trying to work on to this day, is like to not let your identity be your art. Like, for me, it's finding my worth in Jesus Christ. That's a huge one for me, of like, I have worth and I have value and I'm loved just because of who I am from the moment I was created. And so doing art is an act of worship and it's joy because of that. And it doesn't have to do with who I am or my worth. And I get that wrong. Like, I'll have moments of letting it define who I am, and it knocks me down and it gets you down in this place. But to step back for a minute and know that that's not true, like, that's the most freeing thing in the world. So just for any artist listening, like, your art is just a part of who you are. Don't let it define you. And then just have fun with it and let it be something that brings you joy. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Maddie. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to have this interview. I'm sure everyone listening probably got something out of it, and I'm just thank you so much for being here today. So yeah.
Thank you.
If there's any other thing you have left to say, you can anyone you want to thank, anything, just the table's yours.
Yeah, just thank all of you guys and the people who created this book, and you specifically as well. This was a joy to talk to you and to just kind of think back on just the whole little journey of our lives up until this point. Is kind of a fun little, like, just remembering where you are, and I think that's a cool thing too, is remember where you came from and stuff, and what you've walked through up until this point is always like a fun kind of looking back moment. So yeah, thank you guys, and everyone watching, if you're here and you do art, like, kudos to you already for like even exploring this as a realm of anything, because it's challenging, but it's wonderful, and keep going, no matter, like, don't give up, no matter who's listening, who's watching. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Oh my god, I absolutely love that. Perfect.